Good morning. This is the Bitcoin Morning Brief. I am Leah Wald here with Jimmy Song and Tone Vase. Tone, that's a pretty background you got going on.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's my last morning here in Toronto, and it's really cool. Like I had to switch Airbnbs, and I'm staying literally like on the roof of a place, and I get this patio on the roof all to myself. It's really awesome. And
Can you see though?
and new hats. Hey, thanks, Rodolfo of Open Dime. I have a Don't Trust Verify hat and the shirt. So really,
Nice.
I'm in the sun, so it's a little warmer now.
I'm guessing that's why you were able to go get like a rooftop Airbnb. It's probably because it's Toronto and it's, you know, not quite as warm most of the year.
That is probably true.
Definitely true. Jimmy, how was your weekend?
I am back from San Francisco. Did a seminar out there. It was quite exciting. So yeah, yeah. What about that Bitcoin cash pump, guys? You can now dump it.
Good. Well, let's talk about it with price if Tone's willing. All right,
Oh
let's
wait, I just realized my microphone was off. Wasn't even on me, but now it's on. All right, sorry.
Yes.
you set?
Yep,
Let's
I'm all set. Let's do it.
let's do it. AWS. All right, Amazon Web Services introduces Ethereum and Hyperledger blockchain templates. So AWS blockchain templates. So that's specifically what it's called that they launched. This allows clients to launch public and private networks based on the Ethereum and Hyperledger fabric, which is obviously the headline. So to note, also Amazon was recently granted a patent covering their specifically streaming data marketplace. So the big thing for me here is that it's Amazon. So part of the FAANG. And now they've created this super simple way, or so they say, for anyone who wants to create a blockchain. And with Amazon entering the picture and making it easy, I believe that this will create even, an exponential demand, which will change the way everyone does everything. Because why wouldn't they go to Amazon when it's now this simple? Jimmy, Amazon takes a net loss on shipping, amounting in the billions, but makes up for it through their AWS. Do you think this could be another way to expand their cash cow?
Well, obviously they're doing it because there's some consumer demand, but this is mostly just like enterprise businesses that don't know what the hell they're doing. I mean, they're going and getting Ethereum and Hyperledger AWS instances probably because they're being sold some snake oil or something like that. That are saying, hey, you know what? You need to use blockchain and you need to start an instance, and then you can use our centralized database, which we're calling some sort of a blockchain. I don't know. It seems like a lot of enterprises get sold on stuff that doesn't really necessarily work, and there's obviously some demand because just about everyone and their mom is selling some sort of blockchain solution, and this is the easiest way to sort of get into it. I'm sure Microsoft is working on something similar with their cloud platform, um, but it's I don't know how useful it is. It's really just having a very slow version of a database replication on your server. I don't think this actually changes anything for people per se. It's just sort of like, okay, here's a template. You can run Hyperledger or something, which nobody uses for anything useful. It's just, like, I don't know, a bunch of corporate executives that want credit for being for having foresight about, some technology that they don't really understand.
Hey, Jimmy.
Hmm.
So okay, so I never understood the. I mean, I generally understand the concept of a cloud, but I don't understand why they're as useful as they are, right? Like, just like you said on a panel in Texas, a cloud is simply someone else's computer.
Yeah.
Right. So, which I knew. I mean, that part I understood. What I never understood was why why the hype over the cloud, right?
Okay, all
So,
right. So I
it,
can understand why people like the cloud. If you're a company, to maintain your own server requires not only the hardware, but you need to, usually hire a few IT guys that and place the machine in a data center and like sort of watch it and have all sorts of alerts if something goes wrong with that. And you're sort of locked into that vendor. If you have it, if you have it in AWS, they can like sort of replicate your stuff across different, regions and stuff. You don't have to quite as put in as much labor or have as many people. You can scale it a lot faster. Generally the way you scale in a data center is you buy more computers, which takes a long time. You can respond a lot faster with AWS. Right. I understand that part.
And basically, like my background before I came to being doing YouTube videos was either working for financial institutions on Wall Street or running a small business. In either case, you ain't using someone else's computer. Right?
Some people do.
No, not in the financial services. Like not if you're working for Bear Stearns and JP Morgan. They sure as hell ain't putting their shit on an Amazon cloud, right? It was all in data centers, even the smaller financial institutions. The last one I worked at, we were using Google's data center. And whenever like a new server would arrive, like our IT guys better run over to the Google building because Google has about a half a day window. Otherwise, they assume it's theirs. Like because like 90% of all the servers are like theirs, right? And but in any case, so here's what this sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, because again, like I'm not very familiar. I've never used AWS. I know very little about it. Here's what it sounds like to me. So Ethereum is offering you unlimited data storage in their blockchain, right? However, and unlimited, transaction action. However, whichever scam you are running on top of Ethereum, you may also want to keep a record of everything you're doing inside your scam, of every one of those transactions, and the storage of all that data. And if you don't want to use the storage of your own computer or your own server, you can now outsource that scam garbage transactions to back them up on a cloud, because yes, Ethereum will have those transactions are on Ethereum, but your little scam that you're running on top of Ethereum should also have its own database, and you can now outsource this database to Amazon. Do I have it like generally correct?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I'm guessing this is more for like enterprise use and not necessarily like Ethereum ICOs. This is obvious. Like you got to understand, like most of the consumers of AWS are businesses, online businesses in particular, and enterprises they use AWS quite a bit because they don't want to hire a ton of IT people and use data centers and stuff, so they go entirely on AWS often. So I'm guessing those are the people being sold to. You're already on AWS. Why don't you just like run our stupid enterprise app that we can't really prove does anything useful? And that's more or less what they're doing. Is okay, as part of getting on board with our X on a blockchain solution, go and create an AWS instance, and now you'll have complete insight into what's going on into the database. It's really a slow replicated database. That's really all it is. Maybe you can send transactions through it or something like that, but it's it's orders of magnitude slower than anything normal like Oracle or Postgres or something like that. So I mean it's all hype. I can't imagine this being that prominent later.
Jimmy, as a follow-up, you're mentioning enterprise-wide. I'm curious about what you think about smaller dev shops, right? We've seen what's happened to dev shops with the launch of Squarespace and Wix. So just from a business perspective, do you think this is going to cannibalize the market for the smaller dev shops, which are building these blockchains, which obviously have already seen this insane demand?
Yeah, I imagine half of them are like using AWS already. Like, they're very friendly towards startups generally because in case they get big, they want their business, and you get like vendor lock-in and things like that. So oftentimes what AWS will do, and this is something that Microsoft's cloud platform does, is they'll give you a ton of credit at the beginning, like oftentimes like $500,000 worth. And you could run whatever the hell you want, and this is a way to get vendor lock-in and your business when you're much bigger. that's kind of what happens, right? Like as a lot of these smaller businesses end up on the platform. I don't know if they'll actually like I mean, like a lot of the IT jobs actually have already moved over because it's so convenient to like just run a few command line things and then spin up a new AWS instance. And they got like 80 different products for all sorts of like different IT infrastructure things that you had to like do manually in the past. Like you can get new IP addresses, you can even get domain names and connect them and all this stuff. You can have like very slow storage, like tape backup equivalents and things like that. There's a reason Amazon's done really well. And this does sort of take care of a lot of the headaches. And I imagine when they're launching something like this, they're thinking, okay, well, blockchain is going to become this new thing. So we'll help these companies take care of the blockchain aspect. Except they don't realize well, I mean, maybe they do realize, but they're all too willing to take people's money. That it doesn't actually have that much. Like their enterprise blockchain is mostly just a big fat scam.
Interesting. All right, moving to the next story from a former Wall Streeter like you, Tone. So, former top Wall Street regulator turns to the blockchain.
Not exactly like me, a little opposite, but yes, Wall Street related.
Very true, very true. All right, so Mr. Gensler is now working at MIT to research and discuss potential for the blockchain, as well as provide guidance for regulators regarding all cryptos. So in this article, it shows that he sees all other cryptos besides Bitcoin as securities. An important takeaway for me of this story is that he's focusing also on Ethereum and Ripple and pushing the SEC to include them more in the conversation, with the conclusion that they're securities. I will also note that we'll see how much power he actually has, because now he's at MIT, and sometimes they don't have as much power, right? So I see this as that once again, the horse is already out of the barn and they're trying to close the barn door. So the only thing the regulators are and should be focused on, though, is when the offering took place. What happens after the fact doesn't really have anything to do if it's illegal when regarding when the time that they did it. And that's my understanding of what happens under securities law. So regulators will find themselves in a tough spot, I think, if they make any excuses or pardon anyone. Given if they give, one pardon, then they need to pardon everybody, unless, they'll get a plethora of court cases. Tone, do you think this will be all or none?
I don't know. Now, Gary Gensler is 100% correct in everything that he said in that article, and I've been saying this for years now, or at least feels like years. I've been thinking it for years. I've been saying it for maybe less than a few years, but definitely over a year. And look, it's right. It's about how it launched. It's not about what it is now. Like, it doesn't change the fact that Ethereum was a security. Now, I know nobody wants that's invested in Ethereum, but that's the reality. And this guy was the head of the CFTC for a while. He understands security laws. He understands the SEC's job. And as I was reading this article, everything is really, really good. And once again, this is something that we've been saying on this show for a long time. Things like Ethereum and Ripple and almost every other ICO. And I mean almost, there is like one or two exceptions. And this doesn't mean that those exceptions are investable. It just means they are not, unlicensed or registered securities, or they were registered securities. There's a couple of ICOs that actually registered as securities and were sold as securities, and that's perfectly fine. Those were significantly more legit. But Ethereum, I believe, wasn't legit, and we'll see what the SEC says. Because if the SEC lets Ethereum go, then my court defense, if I was any other ICO that actually launched and may have, half a client somewhere, I would have the Ethereum defense saying, well, how is it that we're different than Ethereum? And you have said that that's not a security. So it would be very, very difficult for the SEC to justify not calling Ethereum a security. Now, what happens after the SEC calls Ethereum and Ripple securities, like I expect they would do? I believe that if the SEC spends enough time deciding on what to do with Ethereum and Ripple and all this other garbage, they will call them all securities. What happens after that, I don't know. It might be nothing. They might say that the statute of limitations on doing anything to the Ethereum co-founders has long passed. They may throw a little fine on the Ethereum Foundation. They'll find out how much money the Ethereum Foundation actually has, and they will, take 25% of that, on a fine and call it a day, right? Because the SEC just fines people if they promise not to do it again, right? I don't know. I don't know what the SEC is going to do. Like my expertise on running the SEC ends with saying Ethereum's a security. After that, you need someone from the SEC to say what can and can't happen, or at least an SEC lawyer. I will say, however, if you scroll in that article or do a Control F on the name Joey Ito, Joey with an I, Joi, Ito. He is the director of the MIT Media Lab. So Joey Ito might be one of the few people in the world that hates ICOs more than I do. And I am very, very happy to see his name in this article. And I am very, very happy that Gary Gensler is obviously has talked to Joe Ito about this as he's entering MIT. So Gary Gensler is fully aware of the situation and what these ICOs are and how they're formed and everything that's going on under the hood from solicitation of money standpoint, not technological. Now, I don't know how much technology background Gary Gensler has. So when it says down there that he's going to be teaching blockchain classes at MIT, and he's never owned a single I said security, it's already in my head. He's never owned a single crypto, and he's already going to teach a blockchain class at MIT. That part worries me. I'd rather have Jimmy Song teaching a class at MIT on blockchain than Gary Gensler, even at the business school. But other than that little part, the article was awesome.
Jimmy, regarding Tone's tech comment, Gensler said specifically that Ether could get off the hook because its development has been more decentralized recently, and new Ether tokens are now given out to so-called miners through a network. Do you want to comment on if he does understand blockchain, if he's going to have enough sway, what you think about him entering?
I mean, these are all like sort of regulatory and legal questions. This is not my expertise, right? Like I'm a tech guy. I don't know the legal landscape or what the SEC rules are. I'm kind of conflicted on this because I don't really want government intrusion into markets. I think the markets are smart enough to figure out that a lot of these things are scams. And I'd rather just sort of have the market figure it out and have people figure out that a lot of what's being sold out there doesn't do anything, and it's all mostly centralized, and sort of sell off on that rather than governments coming down on X, Y, or Z. At the same time, I'm glad that there are people that recognize, hey, this stuff might not actually be what they say it is, or it's sort of like a scammy way to raise a lot of money. So it's kind of a tough thing for me to have an opinion on because I can see from both sides. Well, not exactly from both sides, but I have feelings on both sides of the issue because I don't like government regulation, but I do see that they're kind of scammy. So yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one for me to comment on.
Tone, you've mentioned before that you are worried about the Hill finally making regulations. I could definitely see Mr. Gensler coming in and being an expert witness. Do you think that potentially he could maybe be a catalyst if he is coming into the Hill and helping all the agencies finally come together on an understanding?
I hope so. I mean, it's great that, MIT Media Lab got to Gary Gensler before, somebody who got rich on Ethereum got to Gary Gensler and hired him by paying him in Ethereum, right? I mean, that's what happened to that other guy, the one from New York, Ben Lawsky, right? The one that made the New York Bit license. and then got bribed by the Ripple printing of securities to go work for Ripple, right? So they can't bribe them all, right? Like sooner or later, an expert like Gary Gensler, who did run a regulator, will show up and call a spade a spade. So that's what's kind of going to happen. And I'm sorry, what was your specific question? I'm not sure if I answered it or not.
Will agencies finally get their act together and come together on an understanding?
Look, they will eventually get together and come to an understanding. Is that understanding going to be something that I agree with? I don't know. Like, is it going to be perfectly what I want it to be, where they declare like the solicitation of money from unqualified investors to be as illegal as it was before Ethereum? Or are they going to go, or are they going to swing the pendulum too far and like call something like Bitcoin a security, even though Gary Gensler himself says that Bitcoin should not, probably should not be a security. I agree with that. Bitcoin is not a security. I mean, basically this article talks about exactly what I've been talking about for over a year publicly and longer than that privately. Like, will the SEC do that? I don't know. Like, will the regulators, go down, drop the hammer on all crypto, including Bitcoin? That would be unfortunate, right? And then people are gonna, accuse me of causing that. Well, you got what you wanted. Bitcoin is now illegal according to the SEC. That's not what I want. I want them to do it right, and because of all these scammy ICOs, it's possible that the regulators are going to swing the pendulum too far, because the free market or people trying to scam other people may take it too far in the other direction. So I don't know which way it's going to go. The really hold on a second. So here's the cool part, right? So if you scroll down, if you do a Control F on a guy named Aya, AYA, I'm not sure exactly where that is. There it is, right? If you want to read that paragraph, and then we'll probably end the story here.
Aya, the head of the Ethereum Foundation, said in an email that the foundation, quote, neither controls the supply or nor has the ability to issue Ether. And the quantity of Ether that the foundation holds, which is under 1% of all Ether, is already lower than that held by many other ecosystem participants.
Well, that last part is true, but the first two parts clearly aren't, right? I mean, Ethereum Foundation has already proved that they can create Ether and give it back to people after the DAO hack. And not to mention that Vitalik is now floating the idea of changing, the money supply of Bitcoin, and what he says might actually happen.
Ethereum, not Bitcoin. Ethereum.
Oh, sorry, Ethereum. Yes. Thank you, Jimmy. Yes. So Ethereum Foundation has already proven that they have way more control over Ethereum than like the Bitcoin Foundation has zero control over Bitcoin, but Ethereum Foundation has a pretty damn big say. So it's weird for him to claim this where it's been proven to be not true.
True. And before moving on, this final quote, XRP does not give its owners an interest or stake in Ripple, and they are not paid dividends. He said XRP exists independent of Ripple, was created before the company, and will exist after it. So let's hope.
Right. Yeah. I don't know how that makes it better, right? Well, we're not, so we're not a security because we don't actually because these people have no rights, right? But it acts like a security, but the people have even less rights than securities. Therefore, we're not securities. I don't understand how that's the argument. I'm sorry. It's laughable to me.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. And right, for everybody listening, a security just defined as a tradable financial asset. So with any centralization here, absolutely. Luckily, Bitcoin is decentralized, but let's hope that these are, some of them are pro Bitcoin regulators. So hopefully we can still push it. So minimum Bitcoin trade size is double at Goldman Sachs's backed OTC trading desk. So Circle Trade, the trading operation of Circle, has increased its minimum ticket size on Bitcoin trades from 500K to, from 250K to 500K. And the size of block trades is also grown significantly since the beginning of the year. What's interesting to me about this is that Circle is saying we have insanely high demand from institutional traders, not just for Bitcoin, but for cryptos, and they're gearing up to handle this volume. So my biggest takeaway also is that no one trusts the current exchanges, and you can't do these trades on GDAX, but you don't need to because you now have OTC through Goldman, through Circle. So this is exploding the demand for big tickets in crypto while the smaller players are still messing it up. So Tone, you did say yesterday in your Toronto meetup that as a response to one of the questions, that the institutional players can't manipulate the market. I do agree with you that this means you can't predict if things are going up or down, but this story is saying to me that there's such huge volumes building in the institutional markets, and now they have a way to do it, and it's growing really quickly.
Sure. Now, this is interesting. The story is missing a lot of information, okay? Now, the assumption is that this is bullish for Bitcoin. But remember, for every OTC buyer, there is an OTC seller. And you have no idea in which direction the premium is going. Is the buyer paying, a 5% premium on the spot price of Bitcoin to get the coins? Or is the buyer getting a 5% discount on the current price of Bitcoin because the sellers are trying to sell it? The big whale sellers are trying to sell and get out. And the answer is you don't know, and I don't know. Now, we always lean in the bullish direction. And I will say this is leaning bullish. But looking at the facts of the article, it doesn't actually say anything about the direction of the price of Bitcoin over the next 12 months. I mean, you have no idea if the people buying this are going to be long-term holders or more short-term. Are these institutions buying Bitcoin looking to make money into year end? And if they don't make money into year end, they're going to dump those big supplies of Bitcoin. The answer is you don't know, and I don't know. Okay, so there's not enough information here to fully gauge that the bottom of the price is in. It's just not enough information. There needs to be more information. This sounds more like an article that Circle wants to be relevant again now that they got bought by Goldman Sachs. This may not even be true, right? Like again, it's just a statement from them. There is a lot of competition in the OTC market. Guys, you have to read between the lines. Even the article mentions Cumberland Mining and Kraken has OTC desks. I personally know 3 other OTC desks, and Circle is getting into this game. So they need to, hype themselves up so that they're the OTC market that the miners are connected to, that the whales are connected to, rich people from all over the world, like rich people from the Middle East, let's say, are calling them and not their competitors because they take a pretty damn good fee on making these transactions as middleman. Goldman's specialty is middleman. So to me, all this sounds like is creating the hype for their OTC desk and crushing their competition because they see money as a middleman. A lot of people are going to read bullish signs into this, but to me, this is totally neutral, and it's just a way for Circle for publicity to get money, make money as a middleman. That's all this really is, guys. Don't read too much into this.
Jimmy, I do see this actually as similar to the Amazon story, that as soon as these, in this story, that the large institutions got involved in December through the CME and the CBOE, and now these massive crypto hedge funds are in, that they're going to Goldman, big bank, or with Amazon, big players are going to go to Amazon. So my question to you is, you've mentioned before about smart money and kind of children playing around in the markets and losing money, and these exchanges are constantly getting hacked. Do you think that this may create a opportunity and excitement for devs to step up to the plate and start fixing these exchanges? Or is everyone going to start, well, actually they don't have the minimums, but do you think that this could be an impetus for devs to step up?
I don't know if the devs are involved in anything like this at all. I mean, this is, again, like Tone was saying, it's mostly for really rich people, and Circle's more or less sort of saying in this article, hey, we have so much business that we're going to raise the minimums, and you have to trade at least $500,000 in order to get in. That might or might not be true. I have no idea, but it's a way to spur demand. from the really big whales, maybe some from the Middle East, maybe some from family offices, maybe some from even some hedge funds and venture capital firms. But like he was saying, they make money whenever there's a trade, somewhere around 1%, and most of the time they try to trade at the mid-market price based on several different exchanges. So with Bitcoin in particular, they'll take like the average of like 6 or 7 different exchanges, get the mid-market price, and try to trade at that. But supply and demand vary quite widely. What is interesting about a lot of OTC desks is that if they have too much demand or too much supply, they will oftentimes go over to these exchanges like Coinbase or Gemini or IPIT or something like that.
Right, but they also have direct lines into them, so they will also try to go off the order book to get filled.
Yeah. So they'll often do that, but then what ends up happening is they need to go over to like Bitfinex and like do a market buy or something. It really depends.
I will also say one thing, Jimmy, in your response, you said Circle may be having like way too much business and they're raising the limits. I can also say Circle had 0 business and they're raising the limits, because something that like one of my friends was a web developer and just like a UI designer, web developer, and he was advertising and he was offering a pretty low rate and he was a very good web dev. And he was like wondering, why am I not getting any business? And then someone told him, you need to triple your price. And the moment he tripled his price, he got a lot more business. So again, this doesn't mean that they had too much business.
Right. It doesn't mean that, but that's the impression they want to give with this.
Exactly. That's the impression they want to give. So anyone with serious money goes to them, and all of the low-hanging fruit of $100,000 transactions get stuck with their competitors.
Yeah, it's OTC desks thrive on the network effect. They want lots of buyers and lots of sellers in order to make it work. But yeah, I don't see this story as like indicative of anything. It's just them advertising. It's an article. It's an ad disguised as an article.
Tone, do you have any follow-up to this before we move to the mempool?
No, that's it. We should move to the mempool and price, because I'm outside on full brightness and I realize my battery is being drained unreasonably quickly.
Sounds good. Jimmy, what are you seeing?
Well, it looks like there's a lot more people coming in, probably because price is moving, and we'll get to that in a bit. Yeah, we can see the 8 a.m. spike, but there were multiple spikes throughout yesterday. A lot of these people are putting in like kind of really unreasonably high fees, which is a bit surprising. You can see at least some in the 100+ Satoshi per byte range, which I don't really get. If you need it in for the day, you could probably get away with about 10 Satoshi per byte. If you want something in right away, you're probably gonna have to pay around 25 to 50, somewhere around there.
Thanks, Jimmy. Tone, if we move to price, we're sitting at 8,900.
The price is still hanging in there. I'll enjoy the view for a second, guys, before I go to screen share. And once again, Rodolfo Opendime, shout out. Thanks for the hat. All right, what do we got? Let's do screen share. Here is the weekly price. We have just kicked off a brand new week. We are now starting a candle above the trend line that was broken. This trend line has lasted about 5 months. And if we can open and close this candle above the trend line, again, that's another nice sign for the bulls. I will once again wait for this candle to close above and below the trend line and then reevaluate. So I have another full week of reevaluating. Now, for those that have learned this random number generator of numbers above the candles, and you only use this indicator to trade and not factor in any fundamentals and not factor in any trend lines and not factor in anything else other than this indicator, the indicator tells me to go long once the 2 candle is clearly above the 1 candle on a weekly chart. And at that point, to expect you know, 6 or 7 more weeks of upside. Now, this strategy, however, clearly failed you in early May, where the weekly candle did the same exact thing, went slightly above the trend line, which at the time didn't even exist, obviously. But at least on my charts, it didn't exist. And then you got slammed down. So I mean, I'm looking at it from this perspective, right? Like, look at this chart. We had a little bit of a bull run, and then look at this giant monster down candle the week of March 5th. Went all the way down and did pull back at the end of the week. Look at these big slam downs earlier in January, and look at this slam down just like 4 weeks ago on the week of March 26th. I mean, until I'm confident that these candles are less likely to happen than more likely to happen, I'm not going to jump into any bullish trades. Now, if you're a hodler, I mean, you should have never sold, because I didn't sell, and I made that clear on every single podcast I ever did. So I'm a hodler of Bitcoin, but I cannot responsibly advise any bullish trades other than really, really long term with no leverage. But the weekly chart is starting to be more bullish, but it has a lot more to do to get there. All right, next, the daily chart. The daily chart is still stuck under the setup trend line. So the setup trend line is another piece of resistance. But however, the longer we stay in the vicinity of this resistance, the more likely it is to break to the upside. Also, the longer we stay at the vicinity of the trend line, the more likely the move to the upside would be pretty FOMO-ish and violent up to the upside, right? Now, keep in mind, there's more resistance above. You have multiple moving averages above, but that seems to be it. From here all the way to the next Fibonacci line at 13,000, there is just the depth cross between 200 and 128, and those that use the 100-day moving average, that's also somewhere in that vicinity as well. So keep an eye on those. But again, I am overextended here for any bullish trades. You can say that I missed the bullish trades down here, and that's fine. As a trader, as a responsible trader, if you don't have the perfect trade, you don't take the trade. Therefore, I would not recommend shorting here either, because there's no actual signs of weakness yet. There were signs of weakness off of this 9 candle on the 16th of April that didn't amount to as much of a sell-off as I expected. But this is an area to take on a short trade. If it fails, you take a little loss. I will wait and try to time a short trade until the overall picture turns bullish. Here is the 3-day chart, actually, because someone last night asked me to look at it, because the 3-day chart did a pretty damn good job calling the recent high and the prior low in February. And by recent high, I mean the $20,000 high, so the all-time high. And then it did a pretty damn good job calling the low the second time around. So the 3-day chart has actually been fairly useful with this indicator. I didn't even know. We are working on a current 3-day doji. So let's see how that materializes. And these arrows are made from a different time frame. I believe I used the 12-hour chart to go to the 3-day chart. This chart gave you an imperfected 9 off of a doji. Again, it was looking like a nice reversal off the doji, off the 9. It is now back to the vicinity of the 9. The color is flipped back to green. This is where you take that break-even trade or get out with a small loss. So you could have tried to time a short off of this 9 candle, but then you just say it didn't work and you get out. You have 200 period moving average coming in. So again, resistance is coming up. This isn't a no trade zone to me. Leaning slightly bullish, however, at this point. You did have a green 2 above a green 1 at some point in this candle. So this chart has gone from taking a stab at a bearish trade to looking a little bit bullish. This is the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour chart broke down from the triangle. Now it's back to the top of the zone. The 4-hour chart is spending way too much time up here. So again, the expectation is of a breakout. So yes, there are bullish trades on the table, but I would keep them very tight triggered stops. very short because the overall environment is still bearish. When the mood turns back to the downside, I'm expecting a much more violent drop than anything that we've seen to the upside in the last 2 weeks. So again, until I see clear signs that the bear market has ended, I'm going to remain an overall bear. But if you want to take on, counter long-term trend to the upside, just be careful. That's all I will tell you. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to bother looking at the daily chart. The S&P is hanging in there. I got to get back to traditional trading, guys. I even forgot I had positions on. This is how busy I am. Threw on all my positions on Friday, Thursday and Friday. I'll probably talk about that when I get to Miami. I'm off to Miami in a couple of hours.
Hey Tone, can I try to convince you to take a look at BCH BTC, because that's it pumped quite a bit over the weekend. I'm just
it's not
wondering
me
what's
you got to
going.
convince. It's my 28% battery power that's draining unreasonably quick. So it's my computer you got to convince to let me do it. Let me see. Load chart layout. BCH is always tricky for me because is this it from April 4th? BCH XBT. I think that's my latest chart of BCH.
You're not sharing your screen right now.
Oh
You're not
yeah,
on
yeah,
screen share.
yeah. Hold on. Whoa, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to it.
Yeah, so it's gone up quite a bit in the last few days, and
Well, it should end tomorrow.
okay.
There'll be a 9 tomorrow. So, again, those that trade this indicator blindly, just by mechanical trading, you had a 2 going above the 1, and if you missed that, you had a 3 going above the 2. That's how you would time it. Would I have taken this trade even not knowing that BCH is a scam? Probably not. I would have waited till all this resistance got broken. And after that resistance got broken, would I have felt that it's already overextended to the upside? Perhaps. Like this would not have been like a safe risk reward trade for me personally. I would not have jumped on the bandwagon. But according to the indicator, tomorrow is coming in on a daily 9. Your 8 is really, really big. The moment you see a reversal candle and sign of weakness, it's probably a good time to reverse this. I don't know what good comes from BCH. I don't think people realize that if BCH overtakes Bitcoin, then all blockchains die. Like, I don't understand why idiots want to cannibalize their own industry. But hey, again, I'm not greedy like a lot of people.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of us that are trying to time when to sell. And yeah,
Oh yeah,
might be a good time,
if you're
just
trying to
say.
time when to sell, tomorrow, though
Uh-huh.
things top on an 8,
Uh-huh.
you can wait till the end of day, but if this 8 turns into a shooting star candle, then you
Mhm.
missed it, right? You're still gonna get your 9, but it's not gonna be at the high. Uh,
Okay.
for me, this is probably good. Like if it was a 5 or a 6 candle, I would not, it doesn't mean I'm going long, but if I'm trying to get out of this thing, I'd wait for like a candle like this or tomorrow. Like the moment I saw signs of weakness, like if the wick is bigger than the body, it's probably time to get out. But it has to close that way by end of day. If the wick is larger than the body by like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you get out, it doesn't mean that it can't go back up by end of day and then set up an even higher high tomorrow. So, it's a lot of it is luck on when during that day to get out. We can zoom in. You can go to the 12-hour chart and see what's going on there. That one is only on a 7, so you can wait a little longer into tomorrow, right? So try to
Uh-huh.
time the 12-hour and the daily.
Mhm.
So the 12-hour says you have literally 36 more hours to go into tomorrow. If you go to the 4-hour chart, the 4-hour chart is telling you to sell in the next 4 hours, right? After this candle, in the next 6 hours. So I would just zoom in. Look at the 4-hour chart. You got a 9, you got a 1 to 4 candle correction, and then you started trending up. Though the countdown is still going. You're only on a 7 to 13. So you still have 5 more 4-hour candles here.
Mm.
All right,
Okay.
21%, guys, 21%.
made
Computers
it,
like to shut off at 10% and going down quick. All right, guys, but hey, enjoy the scenery behind me. I'm still in Toronto, and I fly to Miami late afternoon. I'll be doing these from Miami tomorrow. And hey, thank you for hanging with us.
So potentially sell tomorrow your Bcash. We'll find out.
I
But
don't have any. I don't have any to sell. I mean, I sold all mine on the second week. That shit was trading.
everybody, thanks for watching. You can listen to this later on iTunes. Thanks to the World Crypto Network. Thanks, guys. Jimmy,
This song is done.
Tone.
Bye, guys. Good luck trading.
Have a good day, everybody.